You won't believe how everything seemed so perfect before Martell dropped his shocking revelation. Let me tell you, no one saw it coming, not Kimmi, not Maurice, not even the fans. It was just another ordinary day, or at least it appeared that way. Kimmi was smiling, laughing, completely unaware of the storm brewing just around the corner. And that's what makes this story different, the way it all seems so normal before everything fell apart. This is how it all started. The scene was peaceful, almost serene. Kimmi was surrounded by her friends. Her laughter filled the room as she told stories and shared jokes. Kimmi looked happy, confident, and completely in control of her life. There was no sign of tension, not even the smallest hint of doubt in her eyes. It felt as if nothing could shake her, as if everything in her world was perfect. But here is the surprising part. Behind that smile, behind all the laughter, there were secrets hidden away. Secrets that were about to be revealed in the harshest way imaginable. And here is where it gets even more interesting. Martell was there too. He appeared calm, his face unreadable. He watched Kimmi closely, observing her every move. His eyes were cold and calculating. No one seemed to notice how he watched her, how his expression grew harder each time she laughed. Nobody realized that he was holding on to a secret, one that would change everything. The craziest part? He gave nothing away. He stayed patient, waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth, something that would leave everyone speechless. You would not believe how carefully Martell had planned everything. He knew exactly what he was doing and how to shake Kimmi's world. Yet, he played his role perfectly, smiling and hiding his true intentions. He laughed, pretending to be friendly and supportive. It was a performance done so well that it fooled everyone, even Kimmi. She had no idea, not even a hint, of the trap he was setting for her. And that is what makes this story stand out, the way Martell played his part so convincingly, making everyone feel safe and comfortable before shocking them with the truth. But here is the surprising part. Martell wasn't just holding on to any secret. He was holding something explosive, something that would change everything. It would turn Kimmi's world upside down, and he was ready to use it, ready to expose her in front of everyone. But he did not do it right away. He waited, watched, and studied her every move, every word, every smile. He wanted her to feel safe, to believe everything was fine, before he pulled the rug out from under her. This is how everything took an unexpected turn. Just when everything seemed perfect, Martell made his move. But he did not come right out and say it. No, he was too clever for that. He started by dropping small hints, making subtle comments that made Kimmi's doubts slowly start to rise. Her smile started to fade, and her confidence seemed to slip away. "You really think everyone is as loyal as you, huh?" he said, his smile not reaching his eyes. The comment seemed innocent enough, just a casual remark, but there was something cold and calculating behind his words. Kimmi noticed it. Her laughter faded, and her eyes flashed with confusion and uncertainty. But here's the shocking part. Martell's words were carefully chosen to make Kimmi question herself, to make her feel insecure and vulnerable. And it worked. You could see it in the way her confidence started to waver. Her shoulders tensed, and you could see how her smile became forced, her laughter sounding hollow. But she did not respond or confront him. She just stood there, pretending everything was fine, pretending she did not notice the threat hidden in his words. And that was exactly what Martell wanted. This is where things get even more interesting. Martell did not stop there. He kept dropping hints, each one more pointed and more direct than the last. "It is funny how some people think they can keep secrets forever," he said, his eyes locked on Kimmi. He took a sip of his drink, his words hanging in the air. But the truth always comes out eventually. They were heavy with meaning. Kimmi's face turned pale, her eyes widened, and her hands started to tremble as she realized what was happening. But here is the craziest part. Martell never once raised his voice or showed any anger. He remained calm, composed, his voice smooth and steady as he dropped hint after hint. Each one slowly chipped away at Kimmi's confidence and her sense of security. It was all planned, deliberate, and incredibly hurtful. He was playing with her emotions. The feeling of being completely alone and cut off is how everything started. Martell created the perfect setup, making everything seem normal and peaceful at first. Then, without warning, he took it all away from Kimmi. He knew exactly what he was doing, how to hurt her deeply, all without raising his voice or making a scene. And it worked. Kimmi's smile disappeared, her laughter stopped, and her confidence shattered as Martell's words hit her. But instead of confronting him or standing up for herself, she just stood there, frozen. Her face turned pale, and her eyes filled with fear. But here's the surprising part. This was just the beginning. Martell was not done yet. He had more to say, more secrets to uncover, and the next shock would be even worse than the first. Kimmi had no idea what was coming, no idea how much her life was about to fall apart. That is what made it so painful to watch. She stood there, smiling and laughing, completely unaware of the storm that was getting ready to destroy everything she knew. It all began with a smile, a laugh, and a secret that was about to be revealed in the most cruel way. No one, not Kimmi, not Maurice, and not even the fans, were prepared for the truth. But here's where things get even more intense. Martell was just getting started, and the next accusation would be even more shocking, even more painful than the first. Stay tuned, because this story is far from finished, and the truth is more complicated than anyone could have expected. You will not believe what happened next. Let me tell you, it was the moment that changed everything. It was the moment when Martell revealed a shocking truth that no one saw coming. Just when everything seemed calm, everything seemed perfect, everything seemed normal. Just when Kimmi thought she was safe, Martell stood up and made an accusation so shocking, so heartbreaking, that it left everyone completely speechless. This is how it all happened. It started with a pause, a heavy silence that filled the room as Martell cleared his throat. All eyes turned to him, filled with curiosity, waiting for what he would say, completely unaware of the storm he was about to create. He looked around, his eyes stopping on Kimmi, his face cold and thoughtful. And that is what makes this story so intense. Martell remained calm and detached as he showed the messages, the photos, and the evidence he had collected. Each word felt like a sharp blow, tearing deeper and deeper into Kimmi's confidence and her sense of safety. Her face turned pale, her eyes filled with tears as she listened to Martell reveal her secrets, her lies, and her betrayals. But here is the most shocking part. Martell did not stop there. He turned to the others, his eyes cold and his voice steady, as he said, "And you all believed her. You fell for her lies, her fake smiles, and her manipulations. She fooled all of you." Martell's words sent shockwaves through the room, his accusation causing friends to turn against each other, filling the air with suspicion and doubt. People looked at Kimmi, their faces filled with disbelief, betrayal, and anger. You would not believe how quickly the mood changed. Just moments before, Kimmi had been laughing and smiling, feeling completely in control. But now, she was standing alone, surrounded by people who were questioning everything they had ever known about her. And that is what makes this story so different, the way Martell destroyed her world in an instant. Martell turned her friends into enemies with just a few simple words. This is how everything fell apart. Kimmi tried to defend herself, tried to explain, but no one was listening. They were too busy whispering and making their own guesses. Their eyes were cold and filled with judgment. "Is it true?" someone asked in a low, accusing voice. "Did you really lie to us?" The question hung in the air, heavy with blame. Kimmi's face crumbled, her shoulders slumped, and her eyes filled with tears as she realized no one believed her. But here is the shocking part. Martell did not stop to enjoy the moment or to rub it in. Martell did not celebrate his victory. Instead, he simply turned and walked away, his face cold and blank, as if he did not care about the damage he had caused. That is what made it so cruel, so heartless. He destroyed Kimmi's world and walked away without even thinking twice, without any hint of regret. This is where things get even more intense. Kimmi stood there, frozen, as her world collapsed around her. Her friends turned away, whispering and gossiping, their faces cold and distant. She was left alone, isolated, with her reputation shattered and her confidence crushed. Everything fell apart because of Martell's accusation, but the craziest part is that he was not finished yet. You will not believe what happened next. Just when Kimmi thought things could not get any worse, Martell turned back around, his eyes cold and his voice steady as he said, "This is just the beginning. There is more, and I will expose it all." His words felt like both a promise and a threat. Kimmi's face turned pale, her lips trembled, and her eyes filled with tears as she realized that her nightmare was far from over. But here's the shocking part: Martell's accusation. That was just the first blow. The next revelation would be even more explosive, even more devastating than the last. Kimmi had no idea what was coming, no idea just how badly her life was about to be torn apart. This is where everything changed, where her world was shattered beyond repair. It all unfolded with a calm voice, a cold smile, and an accusation that changed everything. The fallout was brutal, leaving friendships broken, reputations destroyed, and Kimmi's world turned upside down. But the story is far from finished, and the next chapter is even more shocking. Stay tuned, because the truth is just starting to come out, and the secrets are even more twisted than anyone could have imagined. You will not believe how Kimmi reacted. Let me tell you, it was nothing like anyone expected. After Martell's explosive accusation, the room fell silent. Every eye was on Kimmi, all of them waiting, watching, and anticipating her response. But she just stood there, frozen. Her face went pale, and her eyes were wide with shock. It was as if time itself had stopped, and in that moment, Kimmi's world came crashing down. Everything was crashing down around her. This is how it all began. The silence in the room was deafening, thick, and suffocating. No one moved, no one spoke. They were all too stunned, too shocked by Martell's words. But here's the shocking part: Kimmi did not deny anything. She did not argue or try to defend herself. She just stood there, speechless. Her mouth was slightly open, as if she wanted to speak but could not find the words. Her hands trembled, her body stiffened, and her eyes filled with tears as she realized the full weight of what had just happened. But here's the craziest part: Kimmi felt vulnerable, broken, completely defeated. But then, something changed. Her face hardened, and her eyes narrowed as she looked at Martell. Her gaze was fierce, defiant. "How dare you?" she whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and pain. "How could you do this to me?" Her words were raw, filled with betrayal, and her voice cracked under the weight of her emotions. But here is the shocking part: Martell did not flinch. He did not look away, and he showed no sign of remorse. He simply stood there, calm and composed, his expression cold and unyielding. "I did what I had to do," he said. "I had to," he said, his voice steady and emotionless. The truth had to come out. His words were brutal, without mercy, and Kimmi's face crumbled. Her body trembled as she realized just how heartless he could be. You will not believe what happened next. Kimmi's emotions took over. Tears spilled down her face as she covered it, her body shaking with silent sobs. Her shoulders heaved, and her knees gave way as she sank into a chair, completely devastated. It was a heartbreaking sight, watching her break down in front of everyone. Her pain was raw, and it felt like the world had just stopped around her. The truth had been exposed, and it was undeniable. That is what made this story so powerful, the way Kimmi's emotions were so real, so human, and so easy to relate to. But here is the craziest part. No one moved to comfort her. No one reached out. No one offered a shoulder to cry on. They just stood there, watching her, their faces cold and indifferent. It felt as if they didn't recognize her anymore, as if Martell's accusation had turned Kimmi into a stranger, an outsider. That is what made it so heartbreaking, the way Kimmi was left completely alone. Isolated and abandoned, Kimmi stood there, but then something changed. Just when it seemed like she had been completely defeated, she looked up. Her eyes were filled with anger and determination. Though her tears were still falling and her face showed the pain, there was a fire in her eyes, a spark of defiance that hadn't been there before. "You think you've won?" she asked, her voice trembling but strong. "You think you've destroyed me? You have no idea who you're dealing with." Her words were powerful, full of resolve, and for the first time, Martell's face flickered with uncertainty. But here's the shocking part. Kimmi did not back down. She stood up, her body trembling, but her gaze remained steady and fierce. "You want to expose me? Go ahead. But don't forget, Martell, I know your secrets too." Her words were a warning, a promise of payback. The room fell silent. You could feel the tension, the anticipation, and the shock as Kimmi turned the tables and took control of the situation. This is when everything took an unexpected turn. Just when Martell thought he held all the power, Kimmi stood tall, her face hard and unyielding. "You are not going to win," she said. "I am the only one who can play dirty," she said, her voice cold and confident. "You have exposed me, but I can destroy you." Her words were fierce, brutal, and for the first time, Martell looked shaken. He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. Kimmi's threat hung in the air, heavy and ominous, and the room was filled with tension, fear, and anticipation. But here is the craziest part. Kimmi did not wait for Martell's response. She turned and walked out, her head held high, her shoulders back, and her posture strong and powerful. She was in control. She walked out looking like a queen regal, dignified, completely in control. In that moment, she was no longer a victim. She was a warrior, a survivor, a woman who refused to be defeated. This is where it gets even more interesting. As she left, the room fell silent. Everyone stood there, stunned and speechless, watching her walk away. Their faces were filled with shock, admiration, and even fear. Martell stood there alone, his confidence shattered, his power lost. Kimmi had turned his own weapon against him, using his accusation to rise stronger and fiercer than before. And that's what made her unstoppable. What makes this story different is how Kimmi refused to let herself be a victim. She didn't back down. Instead, she fought back with courage, determination, and strength. You won't believe what happened next. Kimmi's threat wasn't just empty words, she had a plan. She had a strategy to expose Martell's lies and ruin his reputation, just like he had tried to ruin hers. Kimmi was ready to do whatever it took to take back her power, her dignity, and her life. But this was only the beginning. The next chapter would be even more explosive. Even more shocking, but here is the shocking part. Kimmi wasn't fighting just for herself, she was fighting for her family, her friends, her honor, and she was willing to risk everything to protect what she loved. Her courage was fierce, her resolve unbreakable, and her journey was far from over. This is how it all happened, with tears, pain, and heartbreak, but also with courage, strength, and defiance. And the fallout would be brutal, the battle fierce, the stakes higher than ever before, but Kimmi was ready and she wasn't backing down. Stay tuned, because the war is just beginning and the truth is more twisted than anyone could have imagined.